Welcome to episode 2 of MattLees Gets Creative. You guys, I have to thank you so much for all your kind words and your overwhelming support, whether it was through social media at ML Gets Creative on Twitter and Instagram, whether you emailed us mattleesgetscreative@gmail.com, or whether you hit us up in the Facebook group, or whether you hit me up personally. People like Darlene and Heather and Mikey and Andrew, thank you so much for your kind words. Ian and JJ and Ben, thank you so much for your support thus far. And a special thanks to fellow podcasts, the Aussie and the Palm Show. Those guys were cool enough to do a review of episode 1 on their podcast, so please check that out. All right, enough from me. Here's episode 2, and it's a good one.
Hi, Matt. I was looking forward to talking to you.
I really get turned on by good ideas and good stories.
I've been cursed and blessed with an overactive imagination.
If people like it or whether they don't like it, no consequence to me. I prefer that they liked it. Even just saying that made the hairs on my arm stand up.
MattLees Gets Creative contains themes and subjects that may not be suitable for everyone listening. If you're easily offended, we suggest that you get your podcast on elsewhere.
This time on MattLees Gets Creative.
Even though I went to the art school and I was flourishing there and I was doing some nice roles and really kind of discovering myself, I never intended on pursuing acting as a career until actually my drama teacher overheard that I hadn't applied to any theater schools for post-secondary. And I said to her, well, I people don't make a living at that. And she's like, you could.
Born in August 1980 in the home of the Blue Jays, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, Nicholas Carella is an actor and a guy you're sure you've seen before. Well, that's because you probably have. From shows like Murdoch Mysteries, iZombie, Designated Survivor, or Supernatural, or his producing, writing, or directing credits, he loves storytelling. He's a guy who took a shot at living his dream and hit a home run. And he's my guest this week on MattLees Gets Creative.
Love it.
I want to thank you very much for doing it.
Oh, no problem. I was like, at first I thought it was a joke. So.
Oh, no way. I mean, I with my original podcast called Legend in My Spare Time, I started with the members of my band because we all work day jobs, and on evenings and weekends we'd play rock and roll sets and we'd think we were the kings of the world. So Legend in My Spare Time.
Love it.
It kind of just formed, and once I moved here, I kind of lost touch with the band, so it just kind of became me and my buddy sitting around yelling about stuff and saying bad words, which is fine in its own right. But I also host panels and Q&As at Comic-Cons here in Wales. And I would occasionally upload interviews with people. And I kind of felt like it was out of touch because some episodes were dropping the C-bomb 20 times.
Right.
And the next episode, I'm trying to be, hey, I studied broadcasting and I can do a proper interview. It was really hard to have both. So the new project is essentially so I can have those strictly on their own as interviews, as a more interesting side thing. And then me and my buddy can do our noisy one on the other side.
Love it.
So I'm constantly on the outlook now for people to talk to, because you also, when you watch things, you get a vibe as well for the kind of people that will and will not be into that kind of idea. I mean, there's nothing wrong with somebody who doesn't want to do a Skype interview with a complete stranger. But there are also people that are into that because they want to share, they want to talk about the projects and things, and that's really what the new show is about. Oh,
that's great. I can't imagine an actor who doesn't just want to sit and talk about themselves for an extended period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I do a lot of shows with authors here in the UK as well, like book panels, and those are the easiest guys to interview because they just love to talk. So I usually ask like 4 questions and the rest of the time they just talk and I just get to sit there and go, that's right, I look extra professional and I'm not saying really anything.
Oh yeah. I mean, think about how many words a novel is.
Oh, it's unbelievable. And I know that now because one of my author friends has just asked me to read his audiobook for him, to narrate it for him.
Oh, wow.
And he sent me like a teaser of it. And I was like, the whole idea was, I'll read an audiobook. What a cool side career that could be. I could tell people I read books for a living. Then he kind of sends me a teaser and I'm like, you'll have to read this whole thing, man.
Yeah. Actually, I've been listening to Well, I feel like one of these losers who really only got into Anthony Bourdain after he's now died. But like I've been listening to Kitchen Confidential, and he reads it like on Audible there, right? You know, and he reads his book, and half the time I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is really cool. You get to hear the author's actual voice. But half the time I'm like, my God, I wonder how many sessions this took. Because I'm like, you know, I'm still not finished it. I've listened to it for like 8 hours already, you know? And I was like, man, like, I'm sure you didn't read 8 hours straight.
No, I do the same thing. I guess you and I both have that kind of creative brain where we can't just enjoy things sometimes. We see the work involved.
Man. Ever since, you know, I tried to explain this to my parents, and actually, in fact, I've ruined it for them a little bit too. But like ever since I started working, you know, on sets or you know, making things myself, you know, I can't watch something without thinking about the number of people in the room or why they chose a certain angle or anything like that. Like it's always going through my mind. Actually, that's actually been my new kind of like my litmus test to whether or not the film was good was if I hadn't thought about those things.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's a great one.
Like if I'm watching the film and I watched the whole film and I, you know, wasn't really thinking about any of those other elements, then for sure I'm like, oh, that was a good movie.
Yeah. And for me, it's music, obviously. And I go through huge periods where if I have a show coming up, I cannot listen to music because everything I'm listening to has to be what I'm preparing for the set. Because I do a lot of originals, but also a lot of covers. And the way I do that is to listen to them, quote unquote, a million times and ingrain them into myself. But it also means I can't listen to other songs because I'm immediately thinking, how would I play this? And what tune what guitar would I play this with? And it kind of ruins the experience almost. And I've done the same with my wife. I've ruined it for her about like poorly mixed songs or poorly mixed concerts. Now she notices because I'm like, can't hear the vocals. I mean, what's the sound guy doing? You know, you can't hear anything. And she's like, now she notices, whereas she never used to notice.
Actually, I'm fascinated by the fact that you do those covers because so when you're covering stuff, are you doing your best to put your own spin on it, or are you trying to sound like someone else?
I think I am, in as much as I was always a singer who used the guitar because I needed an outlet to write songs with. So I'm a passable guitar player, but I'm by no means a John Mayer-esque player. So the guitar for me was always just a backup. So when I do covers, I do them in my own style because a lot of the songs I won't do them just if I try to copy them. So I just do my own. So I just do my own version of them. But I also try to do a lot of songs that most people don't. So I'll pick like a Sinead O'Connor or a cover of Fever or a Britney Spears acoustic cover rather than doing Oasis and Ed Sheeran and John Mayer. As much as I love those artists, I don't want to do the same set that every other dude that's playing in a bar or a pub does. I want to do different things.
Yeah, no.
So
actually, I was going to say one of my favorite covers I ever heard was actually the Flaming Lips doing Kylie Minogue.
Right.
And it's just interesting when you hear something in a completely different context. You know, suddenly this song, you know, I can't get you out of my head. You know, that big single she had, many moons ago. And so suddenly with the Flaming Lips singing it, like, you know, it just contextualized differently. It sounded like this much more desperate song of someone being absolutely like tortured by the idea of being in love with this person versus, you know, a bubblegum pop song. So the reason why I asked for the cover thing, I was such a big fan of reworking material, especially when something has a new context, like it not being afraid of seeing where it takes you as opposed to, you know, trying to do sorry, is this going to ruin your podcast?
No, it's okay. Are the police after you?
No, I think it's a garbage truck. I don't know I'll step inside for a second if I can help, but I love it. Like I just finally have a nice day here where it's not raining all day.
Yeah.
I just had to sit outside and here we go. It's got I'll weather the storm.
There you go. But so
either it'll be really cool that you didn't edit that out, or it'll be like a testament to your ability.
Yeah, and it's 50-50 at best, my friend. Editor's note: I did nothing. It's a coin toss. But yeah, as you were saying about unique covers, I feel the same way about "Baby One More Time" by Britney Spears, because if you actually learn the song and learn the lyrics, it's a lot different than it feels at first, which sounds crazy, but people love that song. They love hearing it.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, because he changes the context, but actually that song is super dark. I never actually, it wasn't until this year that it really, really hit me that no pun intended, that the song is just about getting laid one more time.
Right.
And
yeah.
I was like, well, think about it. I've heard that song for, oh my God, probably 15 years now. And it just hit me this year that I'm like, wow, no wonder this song was so, I was going to say it's like dark and like dirty. I never even didn't even occur to me, that it was so graphic actually. And I was like, wow, like, no wonder.
No, I know. And then if you compare that to the music video with her in a schoolgirl outfit, you've got this whole other thing going on.
And actually, what's funny? It's like, I think what's so, not to get over political, but I think what's been so amazing about all this stuff that's been happening recently with the Me Too movement and Time's Up and all that is that actually, I personally, it's not even like I feel like I can't watch that video. It's like I don't want to. You know what I mean? It's like you really have really have like, I'm just going to say that it's really contextualized for me how insidious, like female oppression has been. Like even in a time where we thought things were really progressive, it's like, oh, actually, this is like something that seems so innocent, it just kind of permeates people's psyches, right? But the thing is that when you're actually calling it out now, you're actually like, why did we like this video? Or like, why did anyone ever think this was a good concept for a video?
Yeah, there's a lot of things like that now when you look back, kind of like Seinfeld episodes or Friends episodes where you're like, ooh, you could not be pulling that stuff today. No,
and in fact,
sir.
Actually, yeah, and I think the distinction I'm trying to make is that it's not even like you can't pull that stuff today. It's like, I don't even find that funny today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, that's not funny.
No. Yeah.
Meanwhile, it was like literally the joke, like especially Friends, actually, they do a lot of, like you realize like, wow, there's a lot of homophobic jokes in this show.
Yeah. Yes, there are.
Like a lot. And you think to yourself that, I don't know, maybe it shows a little bit that there actually has been like a progression in that people don't lean on marginalized groups for humor. Like maybe that's actually hope because trust me, when I look at the world these days, I don't see much hope. But maybe there you go. You just give me some hope that maybe by seeing that the people don't make jokes like that anymore on network television, maybe the world is actually getting better.
I like the idea of that. I don't know, but I like the concept anyway. So you're born in 80, I'm born in 81. So did you, when you were growing up, were you always in love with movies and TV shows? And did you early on want to be an actor or producer or director and be involved in it? Was it always something you wanted to be?
Oh, that's an interesting, question. I definitely always felt as a kid that, I don't know, I was destined for something, for as silly as that sounds now. I guess I've always been a creative person, that's for sure. Like as a kid, always, coming up with like skits or like really elaborate sort of like pretend games. I know like actually some friends of mine, we had something called the Saber-Toothed Tiger Club, which sounds insane. But there was like literally 18 members under the age of 8 meeting in these like James Bond style, like, my friend had like this conference room in his house or whatever, and we had like a big logo. So we had these very elaborate setups. So even like in my side life, even if it wasn't directly being linked to like a creative life, like everything in my life was creative, writing a lot of stories, making videos, recordings, and things like that. It wasn't actually until I had always planned. Like I did really well in school, so I always planned on going in and doing something academic. But I went to an arts high school, and that was also by virtue of the fact that I got bullied pretty bad as as a kid. And so actually, the story really begins with being put in detention in grade 4. And as a punishment, I was made to be part of the Christmas show at my elementary school.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, when I eventually switched schools, I joined, like a drama club, and I really enjoyed that as well. So that I ended up going to this art school because I think my parents also thought that it would be good for me to go to like a smaller school, something like that, where maybe I wouldn't get beat up so often.
Right, which is good, which is positive.
That's right. And actually, it turned out that they were pretty right on because, I really flourished. The school is called Cardinal Carter Academy for the Arts, which is at Yonge and Sheppard in Toronto. And actually, there's a number. I don't know if there's that many well-known people that came out of there, but Caterina Scarsoni of Grey's Anatomy was 1 year behind me, and there's another cast member on there who actually was like a student well after me. But anyway, so I still, even though I went to the art school and I was flourishing there, and I was doing some nice roles, really kind of discovering myself, I never intended on pursuing acting as a career until actually my drama teacher, Sheila O'Brien, overheard that I hadn't applied to any theater schools for post-secondary. And I said to her, well, I people don't make a living at that. And she's like, you could. And I was like, oh, great. So my my grades promptly dropped, I think, about 10% across the board. Yep. And I ended up going to the University of Toronto and Sheridan College, a joint theater program. And that's when I started really thinking that maybe this is something I could do, that actually could turn something I felt passionate about or a hobby, something I enjoyed doing, into like an actual livelihood. And so that's kind of the story. It's like, it's even now, like when I consider myself like, obviously I'm an actor and that's how I make most of my living. I still almost feel weird defining myself that way, in terms of the fact that I'm really just like a creative person. Like I really get turned on by like good ideas and good stories. So whether that means that I'm participating, as a producer or as a writer or as an actor, that's sort of how I get. I just like being a part of it. The whole thing is kind of crazy. Like sometimes when I'm at work, I think to myself, especially like, being on some of these sci-fi shows and whatnot, you think to yourself, I can't believe this is what I'm doing for money today. We're having a real discussion about I'm listening to a discussion with like the production designer or the special effects team. They're talking about, like, they're really having a serious conversation about which puke to use, right, about which blood looks more vicious. And you're thinking to yourself, like, this is everyone's job. We're at work right now. This doesn't, we're very, very lucky people,
Yeah, because pardon me, the way you came around to us was the wife and I are watching our way through the Supernatural box sets. And your episode comes up, the Thin Man episode. And we both have that moment of looking at you on the screen going, I know him. Where do I know him from? And then because of amazing modern technology, you're on IMDb in a split second and you're like, right. Oh, I know him because I've seen him in one of like everything, because you're one of those guys that pops up in a great deal of shows. And that's what I thought would be really exciting to talk to you about. But then also the fact that there is the producing and the directing as well. So you get to wear many hats, which, as you were saying, there must be a really, really cool experience.
Oh yeah, it definitely is, because, and actually remember we talked a little bit about, ruining television for yourself, like, not being able to watch it. Actually, sometimes being on the other side of a camera or the other side of a casting table or something like that actually kind of ruins, the whole acting process for you sometimes too. Like, I've catch myself sometimes not being able to, dive all the way into a role, because I'm sometimes worried about, like, am I doing what the cinematographer needs? Am I giving the director what they need? Am I getting the day as quickly as, I'm thinking about actually that other side a lot, which can be helpful. And that actually is probably one of the reasons why, I continue to work as much as I do, is that, like, knowing that every take costs money, knowing that every time you screw up, you're just cost of production, tens of thousands of dollars, you try really not to screw up. So sometimes that's part of the craft is making sure that every take you do can be used. Yeah. But it also, sometimes I get jealous of those kind of actors that are, they don't care about they don't care about the process, and they don't care about any of that. They need to just, do what the character demands, Yeah. So I try to do that sometimes, but getting to work, well, the thing is, it's funny that you mentioned Supernatural, because that was a show that I auditioned. I honestly, without exaggerating, I think I auditioned somewhere between 17 to 20 times before I ever got on the show. Right. And I used to be disparaging. Every time I'd get an audition for Supernatural, I'd be like, oh no,
right,
not again.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this again. The producers have seen me already. They know who I am. Like, this is, if they're not going to put me in the show, they're not going to put me in the show. So then, of course, I got to do 2 episodes of that show as 2 different characters. And the first one was the Mannequin episode. I think it's called Mannequin 3. And and that audition was so weird, because I remember thinking, I hope I don't get – if I'm going to get Supernatural, I hope I don't get it this time, because the audition sides were literally no lines. It was just me like mopping a floor and like getting murdered, essentially.
Yeah.
And so, spoiler alert. And anyway, and then when I found out I got the job, I was so disappointed. I'm like, I can't believe I'm gonna finally get to do this show, and it's gonna be this one scene murder, And it wasn't actually until I was at my wardrobe fitting that I realized that the character was going to be throughout the episode in flashback. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize it until they had me in all these multiple outfits,
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, maybe I should get a script here, But I got to work with a director named Jeannot Schwark, who directed both that episode and the Thin Man episode. And he's a character in himself. He's like, I think I'd be exaggerating to say that he's as tall as 5'2", and he's like a little Swiss man, right? Who doesn't, he's a very talented director, but does not really the king of bedside manner, Right. He like literally would be, he'd be like, boys, do it again, it sucks, like that sort of situation. So so it was really, so that show in particular was like fun, especially to get on the second time. And actually I'd only done it a couple seasons apart, and so I thought we were gonna have to go for a completely different look or something like that, but they seemed okay with it. And it was actually really crazy to see how much the show had grown in such a small amount of time. Just like in terms of just budget and working situation. And I think these guys, they've been doing this show like right through their entire 20s. They're going to be 40 years old before the show is done.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Is there an intimidation factor walking onto a set like that?
No, to be honest, it's very, very comfortable. I mean, to be honest, it's like, as an actor, you get welcomed pretty quickly because they want you to do your job well, Jared, actually, I had known Jared before I'd actually been on the show, because we had friends in common. So actually, when I finally did get on the show, it was like he went out of his way to make me feel comfortable and introduce me to Jensen, and those guys are really, really easy to work with, and they really love their job. And so the set itself is actually very, 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 very welcoming. It's to be honest, it's like there's a bit of intimidation because you're not sure whether or not you're going to walk into a set and you're going to run into kind of like a diva star, or you're worried that perhaps that people are going to kind of treat you like a human prop. But I've been fortunate enough that a lot of the roles I get to play are significant enough that you fall in the right place in the hierarchy where people treat you a little better.
Yeah, and I would imagine a show like Supernatural wouldn't go for 13, 14 seasons if there wasn't that positive energy and atmosphere. I mean, that would be my assumption anyway, is that, something like that needs that positive energy and that great thing. And I would think, while it does take a huge team, a lot of that would start with, the main stars, because it would kind of go from them, I would imagine anyway.
Oh yeah. I mean, everyone seems to be having a lot of fun, and it feels familial. To be honest, I'm surprised that they're not bored yet, not that the show is boring by any means, but I mean, to go to work every day and play the same person every day, and it's like at a certain point it's a real testament to how much fun they're having, that they can still go and do it day to day and have that same sort of enthusiasm. It's pretty great. It's probably at a point where they're hoping it never ends. Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many ways you can go with it.
I've never been on a show long enough to wish that it would never end. So.
Now that must have maybe that has a blessing and a curse feeling to it, because you may like the idea of being able to, you never know what the next job is, but because it could be any show, be it like an iZombie or a Designated Survivor. Mm-hmm. But I guess there's always that other side of it where you're like, well, it would be nice to sort of be stable and have that long of a run,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, that's the dream. The dream is being able to, because I mean, no matter how successful you are, after every job, every time it's cut, and then they say, and that's a show wrap on whoever, and they all clap for you, you are now unemployed, and that is a really interesting. It's an interesting life, and it's not for everyone. Again, we're the same age, so I assume our parents are the same generation. For their generation, my parents are immigrants, and the idea of stability was all you strived for, right? Yeah. You literally, if you think about their parents lived through war, Europe being torn to bits, and people like really looking for a stable life, right? So that passes on. So for that. So, for my folks to understand that, like, in between jobs, you literally are unemployed. You're doing auditions, or you're trying to keep yourself busy. But, it is. So the dream, for an acting point of view, I always say, I'd love to be like number 5 on a show. I don't know if or if some of the listeners know, but like everyone's numbered on a call sheet. So what happens is that, like, when you find out on a show, usually the star of a show is number 1. That's what usually they call that person number 1, because literally beside their name is the number, so they know it's a shorthand for who's in what scene and whatnot, so that they scheduling properly. So my dream is to be like number 5 or number 6 on a show, where I only have to go to work once or twice a week, know this paycheck is coming in, don't have to carry any scenes, you just get to walk in, here's some exposition that you didn't know from last episode, and here's something cool about it, and all right, see you guys later. See you next week. Yeah. and then that gives you the freedom to have the time to yourself to, well, if you're the type of person who likes to relax, or if you're someone like myself who always has like 3 or 4 projects on the go, then it's almost like your job becomes you become your own patron for your like passion projects, so that's my real. But then I think about it, because I guess at the end of the day I've done a lot of television, and I think, and maybe not for everyone, but definitely for me, even though television is really having a real renaissance and the quality of TV is at an all-time high, I still, I guess, got into this because I wanted to do movies, and that's still to this day. And maybe it's a dying art form, which just shows my age, but like I never get more excited. Nothing feels more real than like going into a theater and having the lights dim and seeing everything on a big screen. And that's the aspect that I fell in love with. I guess it's like getting to be part of really, really cool stories. Whereas like something with the television, it's like it goes on and on and on. Where it's like a film, it's like tends to be more of like a fleshed out 2-hour journey,
and a full event.
Yeah, exactly. And actually what I find now too is that I'm really hoping that people start going to the theaters more often, because I actually think that's the actual sort of quote unquote death of movies is that, like, when you go to a movie, that's what you're there to do, right? You're not second screening it. You're not pausing it to go and like check on your pizza. You're not, you know what I mean? It's like you're there. You have your attention for 2 hours. That's the entire event. And so, because I was saying this to somebody the other day, where if you really think back to your favorite films, right? I think you saw them in the theater.
Oh, definitely.
You know, no one's favorite movie is the one they watched on the plane, or the one that they watched on their amazing home system, right? Because it just actually wasn't that special.
No, I remember being in the theater when we saw the trailer for Back to the Future 2, for example.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget that moment because the title came up and said, "It's about time." And because I was a musical kid, I heard that little tickle of Alan Silvestri's score. And as soon as that hit, before the words even appeared, I was like, oh, Back to the Future 2. And I'm sure my parents were like, what a weird kid. But I was like, and it came up and I was like, oh, yeah.
No way. Your parents were also stoked too. Your parents were like, they probably couldn't name the composer.
No, they probably thought, who? And I was like, Alan Silvestri. And they're like, all right, man, cool.
Yeah, like, whatever, dude. They're like, eat your popcorn because I paid for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Or it could be like my parents, where we snuck food into the movies all the time.
Yeah, we used to do that a lot, especially as young kids growing up in the KW there. We were always sneaking food into movies. And we started getting big. It would be like things from Boston Pizza or full McDonald's meals, and we'd be sneaking those into the movies.
I've definitely had more than one soft taco in my pocket from Taco Bell. Yeah.
It's the only way to do it.
Figuring out how to like in your inside jacket pocket, pulling a full fountain pop in the pocket, standing up, hoping no one runs into you. Yeah, no, I've done it.
Yeah, I remember a friend of mine tucked the full fountain drink into his back pocket of his jeans. And sometimes I was kind of a jerk when I was a teenager, so I remember kicking him in the butt and the drink exploded everywhere.
Good for you. But honestly though, like, that's what friends are for.
I guess it is, yeah. But I was to look back as a quote unquote grumpy old man. I'm like, man, was I a jerk? I would hate me now if I was me then.
Yeah, of course. But you're pushing boundaries. This is part of being a kid, is like, whatever happened to nice safe mischief like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just kicking a guy in the ass and having a pop spray everywhere. Yeah, sure. You can't undo it. It's done. But it's a lot better than, like, I don't know, cyberbullying.
Yeah, well, he then went on to become a Canadian military soldier who did multiple tours of Afghanistan. So then I'm kind of like, man, I hope he's still not mad about that Pepsi.
I was going to say, maybe you're the one
pushed him over the edge.
Yeah, he had to go and kill a bunch of civilians.
It's my fault. It's all my fault.
Yeah. Well, no offense. I'm not suggesting that people in the military just go and kill civilians.
No, of course.
Making a subversive joke.
That's right. He was just making fun of me, not the rest of you.
That's right.
So now when you do all these different shows and things like that, for example, is there a huge difference between sets? I imagine that Supernatural would be different to Designated Survivor, for example. Or is it just another day at work and it's kind of not same old? That's the wrong way to look at it. But is it just another set, or do they feel totally different?
There's definitely a different feel from set to set. And if you're going to talk specifically between the difference between something like Designated Survivor and Supernatural.
Hey folks, thanks for listening to MattLees Gets Creative. Now, I know people can't afford to be a patron for each of the podcasts that they love, but if you're looking to put a little support towards an independent podcast, it would make you a loyal part of our team. Those fees would be used for the obvious things like the production of the episodes, but we're also looking to pay it forward, as each month I'll donate half of the total patron subscriptions to the Valindra Cancer Center in Cardiff. Because, in addition to being a musician and a podcaster, I am also a cancer survivor. As well as bonus clips and outtakes from various interviews, patrons would also have access to live streams and at least one exclusive episode per month. Bonus episodes could be additional interviews or unheard guests, as well as performances and readings by musicians, poets, authors, etc. Loyal supporters would also get some digital earlove with shout-outs on these special shows. As a member of the club, you'll also have spoiler alert access, where you'll find out about an upcoming guest, have the chance to submit questions, and even have early access to some of those episodes. This this show will always remain free for all of the people that are kind enough to listen and to join us on our journey. But if you're looking to give a little back and help us out too, you are most welcome, and we would appreciate your support. And that's at patron.podbean.com/MattLees Gets Creative. patron.podbean.com/MattLees Gets Creative. Thanks for listening.
There's definitely a different feel from set to set, and if you're going to talk specifically between the difference between something like Designated Survivor and Supernatural, Designated Survivor, believe it or not, is I think is a bigger budget show. You know, it at least feels that way. Larger. I've never seen so much equipment in my life. You know, that sort of thing. Like, it really is like out there. The biggest difference though, when you're walking into a set, is it is like size of role and how familiar, let's say, a director or a producer is with you. Like, that really does dictate the difference. Because you can't really compare Supernatural to many other shows, because like even by the time I got on it, I think that was already season 6 or 8 or something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they'd been together a long time. Designated Survivor was only in its second season, and so it definitely was a bit of a colder set, but only in that it seemed a lot less familial and a lot more business and trying to figure out, you know, what exactly where the show was going to land. Yeah. I was also going to say that like the stuff I got to do on Designated Survivor was like, it was almost all action.
You were a gun wielding maniac kind of thing.
That's right. and to be honest, I'm a little bit choked by that. I finally got to watch it, and this is the other thing too that kind of is always like hit and miss with being an actor, is that, like, you know, sometimes for network time, or because a stunt doesn't work properly or something like that. Like, you know, so my stuff was basically cut in half. So half of what I actually got to do wasn't in the show. And this pretty dramatic stunt where I flipped that table of orchids there. Like, we spent so much time shooting that, and it's barely in the episode. It's like, you know, they had this big like slow-mo, whatever. I had to keep flipping a table over and over again, not feeling so bad about destroying these flowers. But, you know, it was like, it's just funny how things end up being cut. Like, I even, you know, I've had some heartbreaks that way. You know, I remember watching an episode of Fringe I had done a number of years ago, and like, I had this full 2-page monologue to open the episode, right? And you never get to do that on network TV. You never get to speak that. Like, it's just, you know, it really is about pace of the story always, you know, like, it's really like you're getting information out you don't really get those like movie moments where someone's telling you some great speech, right? And again, for time, but like the show Fringe, you only get 48 minutes in an hour, right? On TV because of commercials and all that. So like, you know, they shoot a full, I think 52 to 53 minutes of show to make sure they don't have to come back and reshoot anything, right? Just if the show gets cut short. So it was, even though the monologue is still good, it's like, you know, it's only a quarter of it's in the episode.
Yeah,
you know,
you must have to try to develop a thick skin and not get your feelings hurt all the time.
Oh yeah, well, you have to. I think this is the thing that a lot of actors miss, is they forget that they are literally a vessel for someone else's work. You know, you have your own function, but you have to know your part. You got to know, oh, I'm literally the function I have in this story is blank, you know, as opposed to the story being about you. You know, sometimes it is about you if you're the main character, but even so, even if you're the main character or something, oftentimes what you are doing is you're delivering a writer's thesis, right? Or you're trying to like really have an audience ruminate on a particular theme, you know, so you still are a small part of something much larger than yourself. So yeah, you have to. But I mean, you know, any actor who's like, you know, I'm happy to be able to say that I've had like a 15-year plus career, you know, but anytime you're at that place, like just the number of rejections you get weekly, you have to have a thick skin, because I mean, to be honest, the only way to be okay with it is to not think about it. Like, my parents always I am mentioning my parents a lot in this interview. I mean, I feel like I must have some issues here. But I use them as always the example of people who are supportive but don't actually understand the ins and outs of the industry. Like often they'll always ask, how did that audition go? They'll have to remind me what it is because I won't even remember, because your job is to like do it, say the lines in the audition, do your best, and then forget about it, because the likelihood is you are not going to play that part. And that's not because of anything other than the fact that when 10 guys or 5 guys go to read in for a role, all 5 of them are going to be phenomenal.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, it's always such a clear-cut choice that, this guy was the best and the other 4 were drones. It's like, actually we had 5 really good options, and which way are we going to go?
Yeah.
And so that's difficult. And then, as I said, having your part cut down or edited down, or that happens a lot more on television than would happen in a film, though. On television, because so much of it is still driven by like the stars of the show. So, if you got a scene with a star, they're going to get more screen time. They're going to get more close-ups. You're almost like a function to make them look good. In sometimes in the way it's like, I got to work with Melissa Leo, and that was really crazy, but but I mean, I really did. Well, actually I was happy with the amount of screen time I got on that one, but that was just a really, really interesting dynamic, because, you do know that you're second fiddle in the scene, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's like, it's really not, it's like, it sounds fake, but the only way to keep going is to actually, reduce the role of your ego as much as you can.
Yeah, that's a big lesson you have to learn. I mean, even with myself, as far as music, it started with, I want to be the huge rock star with worldwide tours. And then it became kind of, if I'm just happy playing music and me and the wife aren't hungry, that's cool too. And then for me, it kind of became more, I'll just play a couple of shows a year. And because I didn't have the part that you obviously do, which is what I used to call the shaking hands and kissing babies thing of being nice to managers of bars and being nice to agents and being nice to people who come up. That's
still my weak side. That's still my weak point, is like networking. Yeah. I have some great pals who stay friends with the directors and the producers on everything they've worked on, and I'm like, how did you do that? Like, I'm concentrating the whole time on not screwing up,
Yeah.
How did you have time to go and like be that guy? But that is a skill all in itself. And I will say, though, when you say that, like, it's there's also this preconceived notion that like being good at networking or being a schmoozer, quote unquote, is like this negative thing, but the truth is that I just mentioned before about how, like, when you go and audition for a part, there's like 5 guys you guys are all great. Sometimes the thing that separates you and gets you the part is just that someone's like, you know what, that guy seems like I would like to spend 2 weeks with that person.
Yeah.
It's like, that person seems pretty laid back and chill. I think they'll be more fun to have on set than the other guy who's just as good.
Yeah, which does count for a lot.
Of course it does. I mean, that's the thing, is that like, unfortunately, every TV show, every movie, you never have enough time to do what you want to do. You never, you're always under the gun. Everything is based on time and money. Pardon me. And so everything's based on time and money. So you are, you are trying to figure out who's going to be the best person to be in the room with you for this warlike scenario, and so that's part of it. Yeah. But it's like, but also going back to what you were saying about your music or whatever, you don't have to be apologetic about it either. Like, I think, I've taught like in a post-secondary situation, teaching acting and writing as well, actually. And so often too, it's like we've lost, because we keep monetizing the arts and all that, we've lost the idea that maybe I'm just doing it because I like it. You know what I mean? Like, it's like it doesn't matter if I can make a career at it. I like it. Like I pay to play softball. I know I'm not going to be a professional softball player.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even the best player on my team, but I pay and I play and I enjoy it and I never miss a game and I try my best. It's like, that's like, it's like, like you don't start criticizing guys that go play recreational sports that they're not professional athletes,
Yeah.
It's like it's a really weird thing, even now it's like, I'm very fortunate to make my living the way I do, but I still get like people who've known me for a long time saying like, so when do you think you'll make it, or when do you think, it's really going to happen for you? And I think to myself, like, I make a living and I have 200 days off a year. I kind of feel like I've made it.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, I don't drive a Maserati. No, not that I would. I don't really like opulent things anyway, so I probably wouldn't. But maybe I'd get a Tesla for the environment, but maybe something like that. But the thing still, it's like the idea is that like the perception is in the arts especially is like if you're not the like 0.0001%, you're still waiting, but it's not necessarily true.
No, and for myself, I saw that going into a career in radio broadcasting, my whole life wanting to be like the Mr. Radio DJ type thing, and then getting into the real industry and realizing that it wasn't as open and as free as I kind of thought it would be. And you'll be familiar, I think, but my biggest dream when I was the younger was to be on 102.1 The Edge.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, that's the job. That's the job. And I ended up working with Carlos Benavides, who was there for many years. And I kind of had that realization of, I don't really want to do this as my job because this isn't as much fun when I have to talk about Carl's Furniture Store and here's the new single by Celine Dion when I really don't have any interest in that. But now I'm able to do it as a podcast and it isn't my living, but it allows me, to do it in my spare time and to just kind of enjoy it, do what I want with the projects, be my own producer or director, as it were. And I look at music the same way now. I shows when and if they're there, but I don't play the game anymore. I don't do the hustle because it's not in me. I'd rather just sit back and enjoy myself.
Oh yeah, certainly. And so Almost Famous is one of my favorite movies, and
mine too.
And one of the reasons why I love it is like, that phrase, even that phrase, Almost Famous, is such a telling title. I have friends who, like their band was like the next great thing, and then like whatever, you lose a record deal, or like actually in their case, they were like opening for White Stripes. They were being like whatever. And then their label got purchased by some other company that like dissolved the label. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like one of those like weird things, right? Where it's like, you're like one step away. And that's kind of a weird thing too. I think that's the other thing with acting too, is like, you are always like one role away from, your life changing.
Yeah.
But again, it's like, we talked a little bit about stability, like, that's why like I don't really I'm really much more driven by the indies I get to do and like getting to step back and feeling about it, especially on like on the network TV or the bigger movies I get to do are kind of like getting to step back and realize how cool this experience is. But I'm mostly driven by like, when you get to be part of like a really cool story, a really cool movie. Like I just did a movie called Buffalo with Zoe Deutsch, who was in it, and who else is in it? Jai Courtney played my brother. It was like a really, really cool script, great director, Nathaniel Wexler, really, really amazing director. It was a project that they had nurtured. Great script by a guy named Brian Sacca, who's on a show called Wrecked. And like this project that they had nurtured for a number of years. You could tell they really cared about the whole thing. And like I got to play a really funny role in it. And being a part of that project is so fulfilling because you really feel like you're getting to be a part of someone's baby, and then And on top of that, it's like you're getting to be a little bit more adventurous because it is a movie. And for something with movies a little bit different than TV is that TV has to appeal to a much larger audience, where with movies, it's like you just need to find your niche market. And if it's budgeted correctly, it's going to do well, you know, but you need to find people that you're making it for. So yeah, I mean, sorry, I tangenticize a little bit there. That's not a real word, but I like to say that word. But yeah, you know, it's like it's really interesting because it's like it's the same thing. It's unnerving to have an unexpected future, but I think that's also a real exciting thing and a freedom. Like I'll never forget my buddy when we were still in our 20s. He got to become an actuarial scientist. Okay, like an actuary. I guess I don't know what they do. They set insurance premiums, I guess. He had a crazy signing bonus. Like he's making all this money or whatever. Then we were out one night, nice and pickled, and he just starts crying his eyes out. And I'm like, what's going on, man? I almost said his name. I'm glad I didn't.
I would have edited it for you. Don't worry.
I said, what's going on, man? And he said, he was weeping. He just goes, I know what every day for the rest of my life is going to look like. I was like, then quit.
Yeah.
You know, that was my advice, my 24-year-old advice. But again, because he was into music, right? Like he was like, all he wanted to do was be a musician. And I'm like, so just do that. Who cares? At the end of the day, you'll be dead anyway. You know, who cares if you succeeded or not? No,
and I know that all too well with the side job for me. Used to be working in call centers for Rogers.
Oh, wow.
Talk about knowing what the rest of your life's going to look like.
Yeah. Everybody's saying, can I talk to your manager? Can I get, hey, I'm going to cancel my cable package if you don't give me the introductory rate. That's everything, right?
Every day of your life when you're there going, I don't care if you cancel. There's nothing that would bother me less than you canceling this thing, but you can't say that. You have to say, oh no, let me help you with that.
Let me help you with that. Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Honestly.
Retail's the worst. Retail's the worst, especially that kind of job, like with customers, especially if you're like a musician or a creative person, because, you know, the whole concept of legend in my spare time. So we'd play a show on a Saturday night at some bar in Waterloo, and people would go in, oh, that was great. You guys were awesome. I really enjoyed your show, man. I can't wait to hear you again. And you're like, yeah, awesome. And then Monday morning, you're back there going, thanks for calling Rogers. How can I help you? You know, and it's crushing.
I've literally been in that situation so often where, you know, you're like, just like the day before you're on a movie set, you know, and then the next day you're back at your bar job or whatever, and somebody's giving you shit, and you're just like, why? Don't you know I'm a movie star?
Right? You know, that's the same for me. Don't you know I played at the Starlight in Waterloo last night for 71 people? You don't know who I am. Yeah,
that's right. Those 71 people. You know, and like people offered to take me to a house party. People offered to like buy me a drink after. And look at you. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you're yelling at me because your cable bill's wrong.
That's right. No, it's it is really funny if you think about how silly life is when you start putting it into that context.
Yeah. Yeah. You just kind of have to have a good sense of humor about it, or it'll just kind of break your heart every time, you know?
That's right.
Because you're kind of like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing, but this is how I have to pay the bills. I think of I believe he was a gentleman, was it from Cosby Show, who recently had the whole social media thing because he had a day job. And I remember reading that going, he's trying to pay his bills. What's the problem? You know? Yeah,
actually, it's funny. I have all these articles saved that I haven't read yet. So I know the gist of it, but like, this is it's just sidebar. Like, how long is your list of like websites and like Facebook articles and stuff that you just have saved that you're eventually going to read?
Oh, it's
like,
huge.
I think, mine's like, I'm getting to the place where it's like, I'm going to have to dedicate 1 or 2 days just to catch up on my article reading. But anyway,
I get to the point now where I just start deleting the ones at the bottom because I'm like, we're never going to get to these. Especially hosting a podcast. I save a lot of articles like, we can talk about this. We can talk about this.
Right. And then you're like, we're not going to talk about that. But you know, it's funny. I sometimes make my way through it. And I'm like, why did I save this? Why did I think this was going to be interesting?
Yeah.
This is not interesting at all. But going back to the gentleman from Cosby Show. He played Elvin, but I don't know his actual name, but he played the character of Elvin. I'll never forget that. But it's like the thing I find fascinating about it is like why anyone would shame somebody for working.
Yeah.
It's like, how screwed up is our society? This is like, I'm gonna go blame the whole Kardashian thing, which is banned from my house. Like, we were not allowed to watch like shows like these opulence. Okay, it's like, when did it become something? When did we start to strive to be useless?
Yeah.
You know, to literally be like, this person's famous for being rich. That sucks. Most people. Hate to break it to you, most people don't become rich in their lifetimes. Most people are rich because their parents are rich or their grandparents are rich, and that sort of, and it's like, and the thing is that how can you shame a guy for doing what you have to do in life and not like hiding his face? It's like, I know lots of actors who are living well above their means because they need to maintain some sort of like outside in approach where it's like, if it looks like I need a job, if it looks like I'm not doing well, then I'm less castable or something. Like there's like this weird perception with like, you start seeing now that, it's so important to casting directors and to people like, what's your IMDb rating, or what's your how many followers do you have on Instagram, or something on Twitter or whatnot, it's like,
which shouldn't matter at all. Shouldn't matter in the least.
The thing is that, like, actually, I can understand from an economic standpoint when people are like, okay, so if you have X amount of followers and this will translate into X amount of viewership or whatever. But I can tell you that on a project that I worked on, that I produced, we had somebody who had like 2.5 million Instagram followers, right? When they would share stuff about the show versus when they wouldn't share stuff about the show, the difference in viewership was, and that's the beautiful thing about the internet, is you know exactly how many people are watching stuff.
Yeah.
Is that the difference in viewership went up by 2,000 views.
Right.
So 2.5 million followers was only translating to 2,000 views. So really, and don't get me wrong, this person's awesome, so I'm not like doing anything like that. But really, if you are going to be casting someone because they have no Twitter account versus 500,000 followers on Twitter, right?
Yeah.
You're really not making a huge dent in your bottom line, and but there's this perception, right? Where because everything's available for everyone to see. And there's something about, again, coming back to this idea of making it, right? Where this idea where you, it's embarrassing to have to work for your money. You're supposed to just already be there. You're supposed to be so brilliant or so good at your thing that things just are good at your job that things just come to you. Like, that's insanity to me.
It's
like,
as likely as a lottery win, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like, are you a better person? That's a great point. Are you a better person because you won the lottery? That's a hilarious thing to think about. Like, suddenly we start being like, well, this person won a lottery, so it's like. But even so, it's like just that idea that somebody. I'm like, I don't know. I haven't seen that guy Elvin on TV in a long time. Maybe what if he just didn't want to be an actor anymore?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that either, is there?
What other professions? Like, if I was a butcher, and I decided to stop being a butcher and become a cop, and then I stopped being a cop and became a teacher, no one would be like, oh, well, he didn't cut it as a butcher, so he had to become a cop, or oof, he really couldn't cut it as a cop, he had to become a teacher. Like, no one would ever do that, to any other profession. So
no, I think maybe there's that kind of secret quote unquote jealousy in the general public towards people that are like, oh, look at him, he's an actor on a TV show. See, I told you it wouldn't work. Now he works at Arby's. I'm not saying that generalizing for everyone, but I've known a lot of people that even when I was in a band that would sort of get a better reaction than them at a gig, you can tell they're kind of waiting for you to admit that you also have a job at the Dairy Queen, and that never bothered me, but you do get those people that maybe they're kind of waiting for you to go so they can say, see, I told you you'd have to get a real job.
Actually, the only time it's really ever been funny for me that way was I was in the middle of wow, this sounds so fancy, but I was in the middle of like a contract negotiation where my agent was pushing really hard to try and get more money on a show. And, she was just saying like, he doesn't need this gig, blah, 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 whatever. And that same casting director came into a liquor store that I was working at.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like, I pretty much think that we ended up settling pretty quickly after, because I'm pretty sure the casting director was like, I'm pretty sure that he does need the money since he's working for like $10 an hour at a liquor store.
Yeah. There must be a part of a battle for you where you're like, well, I'm worth more money than that, but there must be the other part of you that's like, just take the job. I'll take it.
Oh, that is something that's actually happening a lot more now, because the truth is that like, even when you're working for like actor minimums, the money is good, right? The thing is, you have to remember that, even the most like successful actors are only working like 100 days a year, like like 200 days. There's still like, you still are like, the fact is that movies take time and TV shows take time, and you are not really allowed to do multiple, it takes a lot of finagling to let, like, it's only been a couple of times in my career where I got to go from one set to another, like shooting two things at once, most of the time it's like you're doing one or the other and that's it. And so anyway, but talking about the money, like, it's like, sometimes you have to just be really honest with yourself and humble and realize that, like, even quote unquote bad actor pay is still a lot more money that you're making at your bar job or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
But that being said, it's like, you also know how much money is being made in this industry and what the budgets are on certain shows. And the thing is that it's easy to feel taken advantage of when you feel like a producer is squeezing you, right? Where it's like, because what happens a lot of times is that they're lining their own pockets, right? Or they've built in all this like false accounting, right? Where it's like, oh, we're so tight on budget, whatever. Where it's like, at the same time, it's like, so the squeeze, especially when suddenly everybody across the board is making less money than they were making 5 years ago, like talk about actors, right? And it's like, and it's such, like, you want to talk about first world problems. You want to talk about 1% problems. These are real 1% problems. So I feel almost stupid talking about it. But the thing is that there is only one me, and there is only one actor B, and there's only one actor C. So the thing is that if you do feel that you have a certain value, then you should hold out for that value. If you know that they can afford it. But the thing is that I've also done tons of indies where, like, I literally have paid to be in the movie, because it's like, I'll do like a movie because I really think the script is funny and I believe in this young filmmaker, and they can't afford to pay you. So like, you defer your entire salary, but then you got to rent a car to go out and shoot this thing. So you end up paying to be in the project, really.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
So you have that love of it, so you're willing to do it.
Yeah, of course, right? So that's why. So you're not talking about twisting the fork and people like that. You're talking about twisting the fork and people who are like, oh, you're in season 15 of this television show. Well, you know what I mean? Oh, you're already collecting massive residual checks because you're in syndication. How about you pony up and pay somebody for the fact that, like, they can get it done in one take versus 5 takes, Yeah. And those are the kind of things where you start to where that comes up. But as you said before, more than anything, all we want to do is work, right? Like, all I want to do is work. I would I hate sometimes as an actor that you have to wait for someone else to decide when you get to work. Yeah. It like and so yeah, you never want to lose the job. It just becomes that thing where you don't, it's like you just wish people weren't haggling with you. You just want to say, like, if you really believe, like, hey, this is how much we're willing to pay for this part.
Yeah. I mean, it's for myself. I've done it with Comic-Cons where I've done it for free at the beginning when it's a brand new event. And then after a few years, I'm kind of thinking, well, every year you tell me you love what I do and you love the panels that I host. How about now you pay me, and sometimes, I would literally be asking for, say, $50 a day. And if they got to the point that they were like, it's not in the budget, I'd be like, all right, well then I'm going to walk, because as much as I like doing it, I gotta walk, because it's not in it for me. If anyone can do it, if anyone can host a panel, then you do it, or go get somebody else to do it. And that sounds very first world problems and diva-ish, but it's that whole, I used to do it because I love it. For example, I was a ring announcer in pro wrestling when I lived in Ontario, Canada. Because I loved it, and I would get to referee sometimes. That definitely cost me money, but it's because I love the product. I love the dudes that did it, and I thought, you know what, I can help out with this thing. But I would pay for petrol. I'd have to buy lunch on the way, So that was definitely costing me money, but I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's what it comes down to. So it is. So to answer your original question, it's like it is a really tough spot, but that's why you have an agent, right? And that's why. But the thing is, that this is where people. The reality is, in Canada, the industry isn't as strong as it is in like the US. Like the big problem is that the population of California is bigger than the population of Canada, right? So you're selling to a lot of fewer people. And the way the government has decided to subsidize production in Canada is they incentivize labor, right? So the truth is that a lot of productions come and shoot in Canada, but it's almost like they don't want to. It's like they're like, oh, it's a compromise by the time they get here. It's a compromise. They're like, oh, can we just bring up all the actors from LA? Like I've sat with producers on different shows. They're like, dude, you're so good. What are you doing in Canada? They literally ask the question, right? What are you doing in Canada? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, again, not to get political, but do you know who's running your country?
Yeah, right.
It's like, like little things that people don't really get is that, I've never had to really experience intense racial tensions in my life. You know what I mean? I've never had to experience, I've never worried about someone having a gun in a public altercation. I've never worried about having to make a decision about, I'm not sure if my hand's broken. I should go, I'm going to go to the hospital. I'm not going to wait on it for a few days. You know what I mean? Like, like these are things that like you don't want to trade off. The problem is that there's not really a lot of indigenous work being made in Canada. Like there is a lot of people working, but there seems to be like a real stigma and not really a lot of market for Canadian driven movies. It's the other thing too, where it's like, as soon as, again, you monetize and make art a business, it's like, how many paintings would have ever been painted in our lifetime if there wasn't someone paying for those paintings to be made?
That's right.
You know, it's like, so if you don't actually think that having, because even though we're inundated with, in Canada, we're inundated with the US media, right? The biggest thing I think is that we're close together, but also that we speak the same language, right? It's not like we're in Germany and we need to create like German language product, right? Or like we're in Spain and have to have Spanish language product. Like we could just use whatever media comes out of England or comes out of America because, why not? You speak the same language. It's a lot cheaper just to license than it is to whatever. But the thing is that what you negate then is a point of view. So you're saying that a Canadian perspective is not different from a U.S. perspective, is not different from a British perspective. Of course it is. We have completely different lives, And the thing is that it's like by not actually investing, like this is where money needs to come from, like literally like the Heritage Fund, the Ministry of Heritage, where it's like money needs to come in. If you actually want to have an international identity, then you need to actually tell your stories, right? And so how that trickles down too is that between, producers in the US thinking that if you're any good, you would be living in Los Angeles, between the fact that like a lot of work is not being generated in Canada, it's like when you see Canadian actors getting really great roles, like that is really, really, that is really special and really rare because, a lot of the times, especially when you see characters on especially some of these comic book shows and stuff like that, like if anyone knew those roles were going to be that big, that they were going to test well and you're going to become a regular on the show, they wouldn't have cast you. They would have brought someone up from Los Angeles,
Yeah.
Yes, but it's like, so it's a really it's an interesting thing because my wife and I, we talk, sometimes I think that maybe our time to go down to the States was 10 years ago, and kind of missed the window. And then sometimes I think to yourself, maybe you should just go now or whatever it is, because I guess the only trade-off is that sometimes you just want to be in the place where you're getting to choose from the greatest projects instead of feeling lucky to be part of whatever shoots in your country,
Yeah.
And it's a big difference because, but I know, again, it's a trade-off. I know lots of actors in the States who who are great, super talented, can't even get an agent, right? Because the market is so flooded, and so, but I don't know. I still think that if you're good, you find a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's a thing about an expression in there about something cream about. I'm thinking of Macho Man Randy Savage with the cream rising to the top.
Yeah, there you go.
If you're good, you'll be seen or you'll be heard. But what's cool about modern day is that if not, you can go out and do it yourself.
Yeah.
Which leads me into, I know we're over an hour now. I hope you're not. Are you okay for time for a little bit?
Yeah, I'm good for a little bit longer.
Awesome. Because today we sat down and watched some of the Paranormal Solutions Incorporated.
Oh yeah, did you have it? Did you like it?
Yeah, I did. And what's cool about it is, you got yourself as an actor and a writer and a director. Of course, your wife is also producer, director, so you don't have to wait for the work to come to you. Kind of like how I can build a recording studio in my room and make music and make podcasts. You guys can go out and do your own project as well. And this one's really cool. And the thing that jumped out for me right away, which I loved, and I mean this in a good way, was it felt like Star Trek, the original series, season 1, as in there's dudes in costumes, and it's really cool. It's not super, it's because it's indie, quote unquote. It's not super expensive CGI, but it gives it something more tangible and more realistic and more fun from my point of view. Because because we watched the Sasquatch episode as well. Clearly a dude in a legit tangible costume, but there's something very Scooby-Doo about that, which I really liked.
Yeah. Well, thanks. Well, first of all, it's funny because when we had that made custom for that actor, Dave Collette, and the thing is that I remember it was just very important for me to make sure that the face was movable and all that, because so we were actually pretty impressed with that costume. But it's the same thing I was going to say. I think that why everyone hated Phantom Menace, it's like it's like dudes in costumes, in the I know you said Star Trek and now I'm going to Star Wars. I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I know the difference.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like in the whatever in the episodes 4, 5, and 6, guys, and you believe people that are in the same space as the other person. You know what I mean? We still haven't got to the point where, I mean, it's amazing to look at Planet of the Apes or whatever, Gollum in those movies or whatever. But it's you can't fake being in the same room. No. I don't care what it says. The light doesn't match. This is my only hope. That I always say to myself, this is my only hope for there being a soul, is that you can tell when something's animated and when something's real. That's basically my only
and
thing. But
for me, it's always the eyes. They never get the eyes right. They're never looking into each other's eyes, and that's a big part of it for me.
And maybe that's who knows? I'm not trying to get all metaphysical here, but please, there's something out there afterwards.
There's something about window to the soul there. We're being really deep here.
Yeah, it's really great. But but for that show, for Paranormal, we were really we were trying to do we knew we could get away with certain things because it was comedy, But when you watch some of the later episodes, there're going to be some of them, there's some episodes where the CG is actually pretty good too. But I have some my friends who do that for a living. They prefer to do stuff that is a mix as well, because it's always way more. It's when something's all CG, then suddenly it's not impressive anymore. They've done Transformers, they've done a lot of these other movies. They're like that there's not two 60-foot robots fighting each other is not exciting anymore. He goes, whereas if you're holding a real ball and then we replace that ball with a digital ball before you throw it, and then at the end of the shot, it's a real ball again. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You are, as an audience, you don't know how they did that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like yourself, wait a second, but that's a real ball they're holding. Did they actually make it curve that much? It's like that sort of thought where it's like you people are more willing to believe something that feels tangible. I think people disconnect as soon as it feels too fake.
Yeah, Phantom Menace is the prime example of that. There was nothing to grip onto. But you did have the mixture, because in the werewolf episode, obviously it is clearly a costume, but then once the metamorphosis happens, you have the CGI shot, which kind of brings it all together.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, and like not to spoiler alert, but I always feel like the head rip in that episode takes everyone by surprise. I think that's kind of like
it totally did. I literally out loud said, "Oh shit." Because it just kind of just ripped his head off. I was like, "Oh, that's what we're in for." All right.
So it's like,
well, because within a few moments of being on screen, you see dead bodies and you puke on yourself, and I'm like, "All right, I'm in." And then the head gets ripped off, and I'm like, "All right, this is where we're going."
Yeah, so the kind of our thing was like, kind of lure everyone in with it being like, oh, okay, maybe this is a little hokey, and then mix it in with that kind of stuff so that it tries to be a bit more of a tangible world. But we got a little silly on that show, and we're still like, you never know. We thought that was kind of done after a season. Like, to be honest, we have we have scripts galore, but that's just how things go sometimes. But something that's picking up a little bit of steam. So I think that. I don't know. You're hearing it here first. There might be another season of PSI coming out. So
that's awesome.
We'll be here. We'll be knowing about that in the next couple of weeks. So
and it's that cool kind of universe where it's just kind of like a team that goes on adventures in its most basic terms. So you can kind of keep writing scripts and keep telling stories, and it can continue to go on for as long as you guys want to. Really.
Well, it's funny because we actually talk about it as like workplace comedy, right? Right. You saying we're like no, it's a single camera workplace comedy.
Yeah, it's like The Office if they were Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because since we've released that, we've seen a couple of other shows. I'm not suggesting that they're linked in any way, but we've seen a couple of other shows come out with similar concepts that actually haven't done well. So I'm like, maybe people don't like paranormal comedy. Like I don't know what's going on there, but.
Yeah, it's hard to know what that avenue is that people are going to grip onto, isn't it? Because you get a book about vampires, and all of a sudden that becomes huge, or a book about wizard, and that becomes huge. And I always kind of think, man, if I would have known about that thing just a little bit earlier, we could have jumped on that gravy train. But it's probably near impossible to predict what that train would be.
No, no one has any idea. Like right now, it's like everything's true crime. The true crime is what everyone's into, and then by the time everyone gets their shows made, to be the last people in the true crime train sucks. Yeah. It does seem like if you have a medical drama, you're okay.
Yeah, those seem to do pretty well. We used to watch all the Chicago shows.
Do you? Yeah.
Minus the med one. Lots of gruesome stuff, and not to bring the whole mood down, but I was really ill last year and spent a lot of time in hospital. So we kind of had that experience of like, I don't want to watch a show about a hospital. Like, it's just, but it's one of those things that's a blessing in disguise as well. I don't mind mentioning or talking about it that I had testicular cancer. So you kind of sit down and you do a surgery and you go through a lot of chemo, but you spend a lot of time watching cool TV shows and then you come through that kind of thing and you have that whole realization of like, all right, I'm not working in call centers anymore. I'm not going to work in retail anymore. I'm going to kind of try to enjoy ourselves more often. And a big part of that is entertainment. So it's a big world that I'm always really kind of grateful for. And I think lots of people are as well, is they're able to escape and watch those things.
As I say, first of all, I'm really happy to hear that you're doing better. My God, that's like, you're such a young guy, and that's like really, it's really eye opening, and isn't it nuts that
pun intended.
Oh no, really no pun intended. Sorry,
it's okay. It's great.
But it is. It's like, it's funny that we need as people. You need these like bad things to happen for you to like actually realize that life is good, which is that's a real flaw in the human psyche, isn't it? That that you make fun of people. Like my wife and I, Michelle, we always almost laugh about like when people are really happy. We're like, oh, they must be really stupid. Like, like how can you be so blissful, like with this terrible world or whatever, but maybe those people, just didn't need a traumatic event to realize how lucky they are to not be a child soldier or not, have a terrible disease or not, it's like they're just happy to be alive. And you're like, my first thoughts are cynical, but you'd think that I had lived in Vancouver for 10 years. You'd think living out there for 10 years would actually make you more blissful, but it doesn't. You're
still that grumpy old man. I think it's our generation.
Well, it's generational, and it's because honestly, so I'm from Toronto, right? And I'm not trying to make it sound like I'm the hardest worker in the world, or that Toronto's like full of hustlers. But compared to Vancouver, it really is. Like the difference in terms of the vibe. Everyone thinks everyone's enlightened in Vancouver, but the real thing is that everyone's like rich in Vancouver. So the thing is that everyone can afford to be relaxed and laid back and go to Pilates and sit on the beach when you don't have to worry about money, Whereas like Toronto, it's like it's a city that has been built by and continue to be built by immigrants, people who like have legitimate work ethics that are trying to like, they're trying to move into a different societal level during their lifetime. So it's a much, much different vibe. So I think the cynicism that comes from being in a place where everybody works for what they have is also a little bit playful. So it sounds like, even when we're calling someone stupid for being so blissful, there is still an element of tongue in cheek where it's like, but I don't hate you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You might be dumb. I love you.
Yeah, you do you, and I'll do me. And if we don't have to cross paths, that's even better.
That's fine too. Yeah.
If you finish up, just dropping your social media, where people can find you.
Sure. I'm on Instagram at Carella Does Not Care. And that was because at the time I did not care about Instagram, but now I really, really like it. And you can also follow me on Twitter, even though it's very pathetic now because with no explanation, and I still am fighting with Twitter about it. My account disappeared. Right. So now I'm at Nicholas Carella, full name. But I only have it is the one that only has like 40 followers. Oh, those thousands and thousands that you can't get back, but that's okay. Stay in touch.
Yes, I definitely will. It's been a really cool chat. I hope you've enjoyed it as well.
Oh, I had a really good time, and I really hope that. Hope you got hope you got some interesting stuff, and I hope that I don't know. I know I ramble, so
no, it's great. It's the best thing when you want to interview somebody for a podcast. You want to talk to the guest who has the interesting stories, not me who doesn't have that many interesting stories. I mean, I got a couple, but most of them are embarrassing. So
well, I feel like I did a little less storytelling, a little more pontificating, but that's okay. That's how it works.
If that's what we needed out of the podcast experience, that's what the universe brought us. Next time on MattLees Gets Creative.
I started playing when I was 11. So right from back in the day, I was always just really fixated on the guitar to the point where even now, if people ask me about lyrics, I've got no idea. But I love melody. I love melodies.
John Elmsley was born the same year as Luke Skywalker. Well, technically, 1977. He's signed major record contracts and toured the United States and the United Kingdom. He's being featured on no less than 2 top 40 UK singles. And right now you can see him as the lead guitarist on the Chicago Blues Brothers, Europe's finest blues brothers tribute act. He's a phenomenal guitar player who's played in front of crowds all around the world, and he's my guest next time on MattLees Gets Creative. Follow us at ML Gets Creative. That's for Twitter and Instagram. There's a Facebook group. There's a YouTube channel, MattLees Gets Creative at gmail.com. Please consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this show. And don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening.